is for everybody, white, black, or otherwise. What's the racial message we're getting when we're giving the impression that if you're black and you're 16, you're having a big black girl come to your party? Like in the one in Atlanta, this girl had Big Boy come and like played her show. And I mean, I'm sure white folks were like, well, I didn't have Big Boy come to my show. And some of y'all in here are like, I don't know who that is. Sounds like a big thing. Some of y'all know who he is, right? And it like gives the impression that everybody in Atlanta that's black must know him or something, right? It's not the case, but so we really have to think about these images. And the good thing about young people, though, here's the thing to take away that's optimistic. I've really found, ever since beginning to speak to, I used to speak mostly to colleges, and now I'm doing a lot of high schools, junior high / middle schools, and I even went and did like the preschool where my kid was when she was 5. That was terrifying, by the way, because if I screw up my 5-year-old, I have like 13 years to fix the damage. If I screw up your 5-year-old, you'll never forgive me, so I have to be very careful. But what's interesting about kids, right, is that they're amazingly perceptive, number one. They're so much more perceptive than we think. And they don't get enough credit for that. What that means now can be dangerous because they're receiving all kinds of crap that's coming at them too. But if we have a conversation with them, they're amazingly capable of seeing through it. I mean, young people, the good thing is young people know they're being lied to. They know it by the time they're 10 or 11. All they need is for you to let them know that you know that they're being lied to. But once you let them know that you know that they are being lied to. They're being lied to by their textbooks, they're being lied to by their preachers, they're being lied to by some of the teachers, not because the teachers are bad people, because the teachers got lied to and believed the lie, they just carried it on another generation. When young people, and even when you say, you know what, I've been lied to. I'm your parent and I've been lied to. Kids respect that because they already know. They just don't know that you know. And they don't know that you know that they know, and they need some confirmation that they're not crazy. So when I go into middle schools and I talk about that, and we talk about media, and they all can raise their hand and give me 15 million examples, more than I had thought of the way that they're being manipulated by race and gender and class imagery in the media. They see it, right? All they need is for us to encourage them to actually keep seeing it and make that a big deal. With little kids, you can do that. It's like, I tell high school history teachers that I think what they ought to do is go into class, introduce the textbook that they've been required to teach, and then say, we're going to spend the entire year showing just how ridiculous this textbook is. And we're going to actually go through and debunk the nonsense that's in this, because this is nonsense. And so your job is to be a CSI investigator. Historical CSI. The kids get into that, right? Because they're watching that on TV. Oh my God, you mean I'm going to actually be trusted to go find the truth? Cool, I can do that. And so now that becomes a huge history lesson, right? You can do that with young kids. I can ask kids to go, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, to go to the toy store, and I want them to pay attention to the gender imagery and the racial imagery, the way toys are marketed, to whom are they marketed, how are they marketed, where are they in the store, what toys are and what toys aren't available. Go to the Hallmark store, what cars are and aren't available. Go to one neighborhood that's poor and notice how gas is more expensive than it is in the wealthier neighborhood, and then you tell me what that's about. And I want you to go into this neighborhood and tell me why they got banks on every corner, and this neighborhood why it's all pawn shops and why it's all check cashing outlets. And then we have a conversation. You go out and do a cultural audit of your community, and people discover amazing things. I don't have to tell them anything. I just got to tell them what to look for. And then they go out and find it. They come back and they tell me, you can do the same thing. Parents can do that. Teachers can do that. And by teachers, I don't just mean people in the classroom. I mean anybody that's in a position. We try to educate people as a teacher and really encouraging young people to discover truth, because the truth that they discover on their own is always going to stick with them longer than the truth you give them. Right? You can pound stuff into their head as a parent or a teacher. It'll go in one ear and out the other. But if they come to see it, if they come to discover it, it will stay with them all their life. So that's the thing we need to be encouraging, is that critical assessment, and not be afraid of what they're going to find. Not be afraid that they're going to realize we're phonies. Because we are. Because it's a culture that encourages phoniness. Right? And so we just got to own it and just be honest about it. They'll respect us a lot more.
You were very patient, so I'm going to give you your question, and if you want to follow up. So.
Well, I'm glad you got on the topic of education. I actually heard a quote once that was something like, oh, these activists and anti-racists are not using their time as constructively as they could have, trying to change the mind of a voter or a company. We go to our kids and we start when they're 6 and tell them the truth and tell them how to interpret the world. And I'm kind of aspiring educator myself. And so when I try and bring these issues into education, and I have colleagues that do the same, oftentimes they're accused of whether it's distorting what the kids should be learning, which kind of is a lesson in itself. Or you're politicizing the classroom, which kind of takes into, for granted that the classroom's already politicized, so again, it's these issues of privilege. So I guess I'm wondering, with all that comes up, that when you're dealing with these issues in the education, institutions of education, you have parent-teacher associations, you have the parents themselves, the backlash from students, fellow teachers, so on and so forth. It almost feels like you have to carry out this work kind of like covert, like start your lesson and then go look in the hallway, close the door. It's like, now I'm going to teach you guys. So I guess my question is, saying you work in education a lot, sometimes it feels like you have to take on the entire bureaucratic structure of the public education system. So I'm guessing if you just have any words of advice about how you can carry on this work and not have to take on an entire institution, like where's the limit?
Oh, you'll have to take
students.
You will have to take on.
Oh, certainly.
Look, educators have to, I believe, if people, when I tell people, or meet people that are wanting to be teachers, I tell them, first of all, I want to know why they want to be a teacher. And if the answer they give is not in part about social transformation, I don't really want them to be teachers. If it's, well, I just love kids. Oh, that's great, I do too, but I don't want to be a teacher. Or people will say, well, education is the great equalizer, but it's never been that. That's a nice theory, it's never been that. In fact, education has been the tool we use to keep inequality in place. Quite deliberately. So if you're going to be an educator, and my best friend trains aspiring teachers and principals, administrators out of Cal State Los Angeles that are going to be teaching in LA Unified, the biggest school district in the United States. And he just pretty much flat out tells them, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to work in this district, you have to be an activist, you have to be an advocate, you have to be a change agent, a culture worker. You are here to, and it's all about the mentality you bring to the work. If you got to come in and have the attitude that there is a war going on, and it is aimed at those children, and it's a war that aspires to keep them stupid, to keep them in the dark, treat them like mushrooms, keep them in the dark, and feed them a lot of manure, right? Not tell them the truth. If they're children of color, it is to keep them in line. If they are working class, it is to keep them on the assembly line doing the work for the rest of us. See, I think we just have to start over by being clear about what the purpose of schooling is. And I want all teachers to be clear about this. And if they aren't clear about this, they need to quit and find another job. The purpose of schooling historically in this country and still today is to perpetuate inequality, not to create equality. And we know this because educators have said it. Those who actually we revere as some of the greatest educational voices in American history, think about who they are. Thomas Jefferson, we look at him as this educational icon. He founds the University of Virginia. He is greatly respected for his beliefs and views on education. What were they? Thomas Jefferson said that we should have 3 years of compulsory schooling so that we can, direct quote, rake a few geniuses from the rubbish. The idea being most people are rubbish, but we just got to find a handful that are pretty smart, and then they can rule the rubbish. And fast forward to the early 1900s, Woodrow Wilson, when he was president of Princeton, before he became president of the U.S., said that we need 2 classes of people. One class should aspire to a liberal, which is the word they used to use for college education, while another class, much larger by necessity in any society, should forego the privilege of a liberal education and suit themselves to perform certain difficult manual tasks. In other words, he was saying the purpose of education was inequality, not equality. Fast forward to the 1990s or early 2000s, I'm watching TV, I see Bill Bennett, the former Secretary of Education, on television saying the biggest problem with American schooling today is that too many people are going to college. Now that's deep. Because who's he talking about? Who's he talking about? Is he talking about the thoroughly mediocre children of rich people who go to prep schools all their life, make C averages, go to Yale, make C averages, and then brag about it? Is that who he's talking about? Is that the person that shouldn't be going to college? I'm not naming names here. I think it's your imagination is what I mean. But, I mean, is he talking about the rich and mediocre? No, we know they're going to college. He's talking about working class people. He's talking about folks of color, people who in prior generations maybe wouldn't have gone to college who now are. And he's implying, whether he says it or not, the mentality of the slave owner. If you teach these people to read, who's going to pick that cotton? It's like if you teach them all, if they all go to Yale, who's going to pick up my garbage on Wednesday? So I got 3 guys that pick up garbage in my neighborhood. They all perform a more vital function than I do or anyone else in that community. I got a cop 2 doors down, sells Viagra for a living. And that may be valuable to some folks.